Welcome to Sobriety Society's podcast. Our mission is to empower everyone affected by addiction to overcome challenges, get well, and help others find their passion. We discuss the products and services of entrepreneurs and how they're helping more people. We support listeners by providing influencer strategies to grow and sustain their business while saving more lives. Our aim is to be humorous, cool, and entertaining. The bottom line is it's all about saving lives.
Hello and welcome to Sobriety Society. My name is Sean Snowday. I am the founder of Sobriety Society and also the voice of Sobriety Society. We have today with us Scott Silverman with YourCrisisCoach.com. And it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing great, John. It's really, really good to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about having fun in sobriety.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all about that. That's one of my favorite sayings is there is a vast amount of fun about it all. And I've definitely experienced that. But, just to jump right into it, this is the episode, I think, 51. So you are you got your hands into a lot of things. You're making a huge difference out here in San Diego. I've been watching you for a long time, and you rub elbows with a lot of people that are really movers and shakers in the recovery industry. And today we're talking about your crisis coach. I'm really interested in what your services are in that. But first, how did you get into this? I mean, what was your what brought you into this field?
Well, that's a great question, and probably the highest and best answer to that is, and to be totally transparent, I've only really been, in the treatment field, if you will, for about 6 years. Right. I've been in long-term recovery for a few decades, and I wanted to formalize my service deliverables because I saw so many people, coming in and out of the rooms, and mostly coming. Leaving the rooms and not coming back. Where'd you go? And then there'd be no person to say, they just left and they didn't make it back. So just after decades of watching it happen, being in I call it the people helping business, I wanted to raise the bar. So opened up the site you see, YourCrisisCoach.com, which is a site that helps families navigate how to get their loved one into treatment, and simultaneously opened up an outpatient program called Confidential Recovery, which is a certified licensed facility in San Diego. So that means we take insurance basically, and it's an outpatient program. So now, when I talk to somebody, I have a mechanism to try to help them right away. And my attitude, if I can't help you, I will find somebody who can.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. The outpatient is going to be, people coming in and then going home and then coming in after work or after school or something to that effect?
Correct. But sometimes an easy way to say it is non-residential. Right. Yeah, outpatient usually runs around 10 to 12 hours a week. Sometimes people are living at home if they're in a safe environment. Sometimes people might be in a sober living environment as well. Right. And some people may not need a higher level of care, or some people are just kind of testing the waters and don't want to go to an inpatient program, so they try outpatient. And we always connect with people and let them know that we're a resource for them. But if we're not a good fit, we'll try to make the appropriate referral.
Yeah, awesome. But we can go into that more on another podcast. But I'm really interested in YourCrisisCoach.com. One of the reasons is my mission statement, and I usually say this on most of my podcasts, is to help everyone on the planet that has a challenge with addiction to overcome their challenges, face their challenges, and help others find their path and their passion to recovery. And I'm really passionate about that. So with what you're doing with YourCrisisCoach.com, this is where you said you're helping families, or is it the individual, or the individual and the families, or is it, how does that all work?
Well, and a really good question, because a lot of people, when they start to ask themselves, what do I do to help my son, my daughter, my uncle, my aunt, my grandfather, grandparent, coworker, colleague, they generally don't know how to navigate the system. And the system really is, where's a good provider? And then the next question usually is, how do I get my loved one into treatment? Then the third question usually is, how do I pay for this? So what I try to do with yourcrisiscoach.com is I try to make myself available when a family calls me or a member of the family calls me. They're usually calling about a loved one. I help them try to better understand what their role can be in helping that person. And sometimes helping that person means they have to get out of the way. That's why I like the idea of working with the whole family, because families can be very passionate about loving someone to wellness. And the thing that's interesting is when you compare the disease that we have to other diseases, like, for example, diabetes, bottom line is a family member wouldn't try to fix somebody. They'd take them right to a doctor.
Right.
Right to a doctor. So the bottom line is, as I was saying, is I try to help that family get their loved one to the highest and best level of care that they possibly can get to, or at least to an expert, a clinical expert, medical expert, to get an assessment and to find a way to, get help.
Now, do you have like educational material, or is there a book specifically that a family member can read that you wrote? That's
a good question. I have my own book. It's called "Tell Me No, I Dare You." It's basically a guide to how to get to yes, but it's not really a guide on how to navigate. I've got a second book I'm working on, and I'm excited about it. I have a working title right now. Hopefully, you'll get a kick out of it. It's called "You're Not God. That Job is Taken." And
there you go.
But what that is it's a group of stories that I'm gathering from either past clients or family members or people in the field to kind of write a story about how they got into treatment or how they got into recovery, or more importantly, what the family needed to do. So it's going to be a book like what you described, but it could be another year before I get it out there.
Right.
But I'm real excited about it because it's going to be more of a handbook on how to, DIY, do it yourself, make the appropriate calls, get on the internet. Because unfortunately, there's so many different things out there that really take advantage of people in crisis, and more importantly, don't really tell people specifically what next step to take.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is that I know a lot of people throughout the United States and in other countries in this recovery industry and field, and one of the things is that there's just not that many coaches out there that support the families. I run into a lot of recovery coaches and a lot of life coaches, and a lot of people do recovery for everyone but the spouse or the sibling or the parent or the child, and they're the ones that struggle more, in my opinion, at times than the individual themselves, because once the individual gets well, the family is still sick. So what are some of the things you do that, like, is it a learning curve? Is there educational videos or a program, or is there coaching calls? How does that all work?
Well, and your analogy is kind of a solid one. What I've learned, being on the treatment side and talking to the treatment providers and people in the industry, and just to give you an interesting point of reference, right now in our country, $45 billion is spent on treatment. $45 billion.
Right.
And the average person who goes to a 28-day inpatient program who does nothing afterwards, according to the science, 95% of those people will relapse.
Yeah.
95%. So what I try to do by working with the family, and according to the science, up north of 75% of relapses can be induced, if you will, or can take place because of the family, which is fascinating when I learned that years ago. Really what that means is sometimes, as you said, if the individual who goes in to get help starts their path to transformation, but the family doesn't change at all, the dynamic of how they've been communicating the family back to the person who's getting these new tools, that hasn't changed. So what happens is the person who's new in recovery kind of reacts to the old conversations they've had and then ends up doing what they've always done because that's how they feel better, and that's to pick up the news.
Right. Yeah. And the relapse is like when they say it's centered in the mind, it's I know when I finally, I went in and out for a long time, and when I finally got the understanding of there was to be a change in my behavior, well, then that meant the dance I was doing with my mother had to change. Well, I stopped dancing, but she didn't know how to stop dancing, and she didn't even know that she was able to. And so she would say, want to buy me something. And I'm like, well, everything behind what you're about to buy for me, then I have to do something, or you're going to dangle that over my head. And so when I would say stuff like that, it would start an argument. And even though we weren't in the same context, it was a real challenge for her. And if she would have had someone like you or one of your coaches at your crisiscoach.com, then I think she would have had I know our relationship would have changed dramatically and probably more, I don't want to say more fast, but faster. So what are some of the tools or techniques, or how does that all work?
Well, I try to start with the person who makes the phone call. And by the way, if I throw too many facts at you, John, let me know and I'll stop doing it. But I've just found it fascinating that no one seems to understand how the process works. I mean, look, clearly, if you're handcuffed to a gurney in an ER, what next steps look like could be kind of crystal clear.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you're making a phone call on behalf of a loved one, and the fact is that 95%, that number comes up again, the average person who makes the phone call is not the addict or alcoholic. It's really a family member or a colleague or a close friend or a subordinate or somebody who's trying to help that person out. Because the person who needs the help really, can't do much with what's going on.
Right. So is there like a statistic on, is it more men or more women that you've experienced reach out to help the individual?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you think, is it more men or is it more women that reach out to help the individual?
That's a great question. I think I would say it's mixed, but if I had to lean one way or another, I would say that it's majority is women. It's usually a mom, right, if you will, that's calling about a son or a daughter. But at some point we try to get, if there's an active father involved, we get them involved right away. So I'm not helping coach one person who then has to translate what they thought they heard from me to their significant other, because I want that other person to hear the same thing. And then what I try to do, to be honest with you, is move the family out of the way. Right. And I become the navigator. I call it family navigator. I love that term. Yeah. I then become the member of the family who says to the family, based on everything I've heard, I'm now going to talk to the next person in line here. And sometimes it's a sibling to get background. Sometimes it's directly to the person who has the issue. And then I talk with them and I give them what I consider to be very transparent, straightforward, no holds barred, no fluffy stuff, and just say, look, you always have a choice. And here's a couple of options, a couple of suggestions. It's your job to do what you can to make that decision. But if you want some help, I'm here to help you navigate next steps.
Yeah. Now, some of I interview a lot of, treatment centers, IOP, challenge therapy. There's a lot of different varieties of, addiction recovery businesses that have been on this podcast. And what I found is a lot of them is I ask them, one of the questions I ask is, how do you follow up with people? And a lot of them are like, we call them and I've been in this gig since I was 14. So I know that the follow-up, especially if they're like, if they're saying, 100% of the people that go through our program, recover and stay sober forever. I'm like, Yeah, when you're calling that person 90 days later, they're in the nightclub, or at the sports bar partying it up. And when they answer their mobile phone, they're just going, "Oh yeah, I'm sober." So it's like they don't really have a way to follow up. But if they were to hand them off to one of your coaches at yourcrisiscoach.com, then that follow up, they would. So do you get people from treatment centers or detox or something like that? Are there anything people you're affiliated with in a strategic alliance that bring people to you? Because I know a lot of people that need you.
Well, I don't. It's interesting in the industry. When I hear people who've been around it for 25, 30 years, and they're going, "Well, Scott, you're not doing it the right way." I said, "Well, how long have you been doing this?" "Oh, 25, 27 years." I go, "Well, are you part of the, leadership group that's delivered this 95% failure rate?" "Oh, well, that failure rate's really up to the individual, because we've actually had a 5% success rate." And according to the experts at the University of Albuquerque, that's bull. That is bull, meaning the studies show that if you do nothing, you have a 5% chance of getting clean and staying clean.
Right.
So when treatment centers brag about their outcomes, which, by the way, no insurance company that I've ever heard of, no funding source that I ever know of, has ever funded a follow-up mechanism. Meaning, if you wish to do a study and you try to bring your graduates in, if you will, you have to do it on your own time and on your own dime, because there are not resources out there for it. And the insurance industry doesn't pay for that. Therefore, plus, think about this. You run a business, you follow up with your customers, and you have a documented 95% relapse rate after 6 months, 9 months, a year. There's no way you're going to stay in business if people think that your failure rate's that high.
Right.
So no one really tracks it. And people ask me, "How do you know that, Scott?" Well, I ran a nonprofit for 18 years. And I worked with people coming out of jail and prison. And in California, there's an 80% recidivism rate. And we actually had a 3-year study done. And we followed up with everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that 90% will take our calls. And people coming out of jail and prison who have been there long term, they don't have what's called a permanent address.
Right.
So there was an expert told me about 15 years ago, here's a great way. We were doing a study on parolees coming out of prison. And they said there's only one time of the year that you can catch these people at a phone number you can count on. And I'm thinking, really? And the next thing out of their mouth is, you call Thanksgiving Day, and if they went through your program, you probably captured their mom or dad's phone number. You call them at home, and you'll get those people at home on Thanksgiving. So we did that for 2 years. So we came up with some very interesting outcome data, but it is very difficult to do. And I know, because we tried for a long time, and we do like most people do. We call, we follow up, we keep, and then we're in San Diego. So we don't have clients coming from all over the country or the world like some of the providers do. And we try to touch base with everybody. But part of our model, of our treatment center was we wanted to get people in for, intensive outpatient or outpatient, or now MAT, medication assisted treatment. And we wanted them to know that this is not a 90-day one-off. We want you to continue with us, even if it's once a month, just to have a check-in or a tether, and then do that for at least 9 more months to a year. And then we talk to them after treatment, their intensive piece, to engage them, to know that the relapse rate is so high. And we know that if you're comfortable with us and you feel like you can make a phone call, or you'll take our call, we know we can improve on those odds. Are you willing to join us? Some people have taken advantage of it. Most haven't, because once people get, clean and sober, they kind of want to move away from the people that kind of touched them during the beginning, especially from a clinical perspective. And I found that in my old world as well. Nobody wants to kind of have that on their resume, went through rehab. It's not a great, job enhancement opportunity or transition headline. So it is a tough one. We're always working on how do we improve that. And, it's a real precarious situation.
Yeah. It's funny that you say the Thanksgiving thing, because, we have a saying is, when every time I get out of jail, I go where all the tough guys go, mom's couch. And the thing is, that, you know, home is where the heart is and all that. And it's great that you have some type of follow-up, especially like that. That's really great information for the listeners, because it'll stir some people up to go, wow, you know, that was really an expert, what's it called? A pro tip, you know, like I wouldn't have thought of that myself. I had to hear it from you, because I never thought about that. But that's like but how do you get in front of more people? What are some of the things you're doing to get in front of more people so that you can make a bigger difference?
Well, you know, if people Google me, you know, Scott H Silverman, and I put my middle initial in there because there's another guy in Japan who gets a lot of my emails and social media stuff.
Right.
You Google Scott H Silverman, or you call me directly at 619-993-2738. You know, I pick up my own phone. I'm one of those people that when I see an unknown caller in my phone, I pick it up. And I pick it up because, you know what? This is what I would consider to be, I call it a funeral avoidance call.
Right.
Funeral avoidance, meaning if I take this call and I call someone back and they're calling me because they were referred to me and they saw my name on the web, maybe we can talk them through something. Maybe we can get to the next level of what getting help looks like, or maybe even talk about hope and how that, you know, there is hope and there is help out there. And because it's most of my coaching work is by phone, I can take calls from anywhere, you know, in the country, let alone the world, if you want to. So, I mean, I've had people call me when they're in the Bahamas. I've had people call me, you know, when they're in South America. I've had people call me in Europe. And because we had a connection and they trusted me, when they called me, they knew that I would give them the answer that they were looking for, or at least a couple of options so they could create an answer to make a decision, an informed decision, if you will. So it's word of mouth. It's organic. You know, I don't advertise per se other than my own website. I do a lot of social media work, so people can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter and Instagram. I'm moving my way up the charts there a little bit. So
there you go.
That's how they do it. You know, and I give my number out. And by the way, the number I gave, it's my personal cell number. And people go, why would you do that? I said, well, I'm in the business of helping people get access to treatment and help and hope. Why would I not give out my number?
Right.
Why would I not give out my number? I just did it last year, and it's funny, on Mother's Day. And I looked and I asked the local, because I'm a subject matter expert here in San Diego, and I go on a local television station, KUSI, and I asked I went on to the producer. I said, can you give me a camera that'll be mine at the end of the interview so I can go in and make an appeal? I got to tell you, that it's interesting. That Mother's Day, I probably had 7 phone calls after the segment, and within that next 10 days, I had another 15 phone calls.
Yeah.
And you know what, John? If 15% of our community has an active addiction problem or substance abuse problem that will erupt in the next year, 15%, San Diego's 3.3 million.
Right.
And that's over 500,000 people. My phone should be blowing up every day.
Right.
It should be blowing up every day. Even if someone's going, Scott, I can't hire you for an hourly rate yet, but I have a question for you. Okay, fire. What's your question? How do I know if I have a problem? And then, you know, we sit down and we talk for a few minutes. Those calls are always free. You know, free's my second favorite F word, so I like putting it out there.
Oh, nice. So what's your first favorite F word?
Oh, I don't want to say it on the podcast, but you know, you could say food. You know, the way I'm feeling this week, because my pants are a little tight, and I'm getting ready to present to a circus club here in San Diego. But you know, I just want people to call, and that's why. And I've never had a situation where I couldn't handle the call volume. I can't wait. One of my dreams is to drink from a fire hose, Joan.
Right.
And what I mean by that is I'm getting so many calls a day. I now have to route half my calls to somebody else on my team that can take those calls and start helping families navigate. And I love that. Again, that term family navigator, it's not even on my website yet. It just came up this last 9 months. And I'm going to put it up there and, you know, start SMOing it so people know that, you know, wait, you can call, you know, because when you call treatment centers, you know this, you're going to talk to basically a potential admin intake person, or you're going to talk to one of the marketing people, or you're going to talk to a call center. And their job is just to, you know, basically the first question out of their mouth is, what insurance do you have?
Right.
You know, who insured with? Have you met your deductible? And I just, you know, I grew up in the retail clothing business, and I think about that. And I remember, you know, in my family's business, that was a clothing business. Imagine somebody walking in the door and says, okay, good to see you again, Barbara. how much money do you have to spend today? It's like, what?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
this industry does it the way they do it, and they continue to get away with it. I think it's changing now, but to me, that's why I opened up. Look, my book, Tell Me No, I Dare You, I created after doing fundraising in the nonprofit world, and I couldn't really find a way to deal with the rejection. So I started writing a book about it and how to get to yes. So when I get clients in front of me who I know are suffering from a disease of denial, like me, and the inability to feel feelings and don't think they really have a problem, I know who my customer is, and that's helpful. And hopefully I can help them navigate next steps.
So now that's interesting that you have that, you give your phone number out and you get these calls. I know because in what I do, part of what I do is I help individual businesses. I have the people do the follow-up phone calls for the individual business. So if there's business A, B, and A, B, C, then I will have someone make the follow-up calls only for ABC leads. And if there's a 1, 2, 3 company, I'll have someone make follow-up calls only for their leads. And we don't share the leads. And this isn't where I'm generating leads to a website and then passing them out and brokering the leads. I don't do that. But it does get overwhelming for some companies where they're getting so many calls that they can't do the follow-up calls. They just don't have time. Personally, I have like 5 different phone numbers because, there's different technologies that I use. So with that being said, you were saying that you do one of my calls is it goes to like 25 different countries or something like that. So do you do Skype calls when you're working with other countries, or how does that work? Do you have a specific technology that you use?
Skype, GoToMeeting, there's different mechanisms. I mean, I've only had a couple of offshore, live, Skype calls, but any technology that somebody has out there that they'd like to utilize. A buddy of mine years ago was going to do some big work down in, I think it was in, I want to say Colombia, but anyway, he had called because he was doing a teleconference, and it was audio and video, and he brought me in for a certain segment to talk about the tough love side of why that can be helpful, within the modality of training. And he was basically an interventionist. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if someone has a need and there's a desire and I can help, I'll do everything I can to put myself, and make in a position to be of service and available. And obviously this is my living, so I get paid for my time. Right. But I'm always willing to take, a 10, 15-minute call. And then if we connect, the chemistry is there. And the way I work with my coaching is you pay an upfront fee for a few hours, and then you can, ratchet it down over time. So you want to call me in a crisis and you're at some environment, you're thinking about using or drinking. It's a 10-minute call. And I try to answer my phone 7/24. And the only time I turn it off is when I go to sleep at night. So, but you can always text me, and then I can get it either on my laptop when I wake up or when I check my phone in the morning. And no one's ever gone past 24 hours reaching out to me. And again, if my phone's on me and I can take a call of someone who needs help, but I dare people. I challenge people. I said, you call me. You got my number for a reason. And people, I don't want to bother you. I said, wait, you'd rather consider taking your own life and not talk about it?
Right.
Well, not really when you put it like that. I go, well, that's the way I'm putting it.
Yeah.
And they'll call. I challenge them, invite them, engage them.
I have a saying when people get into the self-pity or something, or they're talking down to themselves. And I stole this from somewhere, obviously, but I'll just say, are you my friend? And they'll go, well, yeah. And I'll go, well, then don't treat my friend that way. And, I got that a long time ago, but there's also times with people like yourself and like myself, I have long-term recovery, supposedly. But if you ask my friends, they'll go, no, that guy's a newcomer. But, I got a couple decades. But even people with 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, we still need coaching, and we still fall into the ruts. So do you work with people that are like maybe they dropped out for a couple years and they want to get back into some type of program, whether it's a 12-step or an alternative?
You know, it's interesting. I just had a conversation 2 days ago with somebody who's a contemporary professional, and they have somebody they're working with, and they say, would you be willing to work with my client here? And, you know, I said, absolutely. Absolutely was my response on the email. And then they email back, oh, you know, he's actually looking just for a sponsor. And I emailed back, absolutely. What part of absolutely are you having trouble with? Because they had Googled me and realized I do this professionally. But, you know, one of the things that I always did with guys that I sponsored was, if you're going to go out and drink or you're going to go out and do drugs again, I'd like you to make a commitment. And they're like, okay, what? You know, all that dismissal of, okay, what? I'd like you to call me before you go out. Well, why would I do that? I said, because if you've got enough stuff and it's going to be a great run, or you've got your, you know, you just got your yearly bonus and we know we can close the place down, call me, I'll go with you.
Right.
It's like, what? Call me, I'll go with you. I mean, if you could tee something up that sounds so exciting that I would sacrifice my sobriety with you sacrificing yours, I'll go with you. And the idea was just to disarm the knucklehead who said, I'm just going to go sit in the bar for a couple hours, I won't drink. Or I'm just going to go buy, you know, an 8-ball and just put it in the back of my, you know, motorcycle and ride around for a couple hours. And if I still wanted a couple hours, I'll do it. Yeah, right. Didn't your best thinking get you here? So I try to use language that's engaging, hopefully a little humorous, and that, you know, I call it reflective thinking. And what I mean by that is when people say, well, what do you think about so and so and such and such? I go, well, let me ask you, based on what you've told me, what do you think about so and so and such and such? Oh, that's a good question. I says, your question. I'm just putting it back in front of you. Right. Because I love that. I love that one, especially because I work with a lot of, you know, first responders, people in law enforcement, medical professionals, other professionals who, you know, suffer from, you know, a high level of grandiosity and terminal uniqueness. And when they come to me and we talk about it, they go, well, you know, my life's pretty manageable. I go, well, you've been sitting here for 20 minutes. And last year you told me you gambled almost $500,000 away. Well, yeah, I was just on a bad streak. Okay. Right. And then you mentioned you got 2 DUIs in the last quarter of last year. You even framed it in the last quarter as if your fiscal responsibility for your attorney, you got to change. You tried to write it off, but couldn't because of what happened. Well, yeah, but that was, you know, I shouldn't have been pulled over. It was sobriety checkpoint. I go, the same one? Well, yeah, it was on my way home. And then, so clearly, you know, the reflective thinking is, well, let me ask you, 2 DUIs, $500,000 losses at the casino. What part of your life right now is manageable? Well, I still have my job. I said, well, wait a minute. You told me you're an equity partner in a large law firm. Don't you have a morals clause? How'd you know about that? I go, well, most large businesses who have assets, you know, or stockholders, you know, they have moral clauses. And those moral clauses are to make sure that the senior leadership, if they go off the rails, there's a consequence. They can remove you from your equity position. Well, they would never do that to me. I go, wait a minute. Weren't you on the conference call last week with me, with one of your partners who was outlining that to you? Oh, was that you on the call? Yeah. So I don't think of myself as a smart guy. So I just simply kind of reflect back and regurgitate what I'm hearing from somebody. Because most people, look, I used to be an unlicensed pharmacist.
Right.
And when I say that out in public in front of law enforcement, and I work closely, I'm on the prescription drug abuse task force. I'm on the methamphetamine task force. When they hear me say that, they cringe and go, wait, what did he say? And they said, you heard him right. So I get it. And I was one of those drug seekers. And I was one of those people that lied and cheated and manipulated. So when I have people come to me and want to do a workaround, it's like, you're not paying me yet to do a workaround, and you'll never pay me enough to have me let you do a workaround.
Right.
So let's dispense of all the stuff that you're about to tell me in the next half an hour, and let's just jump to, what would you like to do? How can I help?
Right. Now, you said, now there's a lot that you said in there that, I mean, we're going to have to do at least another 2, if not 3 podcasts, because I know you do this thing with the realtors. I know you do this thing with the nonprofits. And I know that you do these things that, like, it's not so much political, but you're politically connected, as well as having this and then the confidential recovery. And, but with this, with your crisis coach, do you have any group coaching programs, or is it all individual, or do you offer small groups with that, or is that another area of your, under the umbrella?
Well, it is a business model. I'd like to do it. The thing that's interesting about, I said earlier, I'd like to drink from a fire hose. There aren't a lot of people putting their hands up in a room that say, excuse me, but I have a problem and I'd like some help. You just don't see them out there waving their hands on the side of the road wanting help for substance abuse and addiction treatment. Right. So if I were able to garner enough momentum, I would break it down and, do a night a week or 2 nights a week or a Saturday where people could actually come in a room who have not made a decision yet, with the idea that in that room they would sit and hear from others to start to realize that there is hope and help. And I'm not talking about necessarily people who have been there and done that, but I'm talking about people who have done it and haven't been there yet, meaning they're still on the fence about whether they really have a problem. And I go around the room and kind of think about it and have it facilitated the right way and let people know, it sounds like, you may want to do some thinking, and we'll see you next week. And if you need something beforehand, here's 4 or 5 different referrals. Here's a couple detoxes in town. Here's a clinician you should talk with. Here's a doctor you should go get a physical from, because you just look like you've just fallen off the back of a high speed, tractor trailer.
Yeah.
So that would be the idea, is to engage people, to start getting them to open their mind and realize, there's 3 magical words that most people hate and are so critical, and that is, I need help.
Right.
So if we can get people to think about that and talk about that and realize that they're not alone, I would love to be able to do groups. And I do public speaking whenever I can. As a matter of fact, as soon as I hang up with you, I'm going in to do a Lions Club here in San Diego. And last week I made 6 presentations. One was to a public health class at San Diego State University, which was really awesome, because these are the people that are in, college to take some component of public health in their future, whether it's being a doctor or a caseworker or, some clinician. And that was very exciting. And then that evening I went and spoke to a group called Women in Business, and they were all professionals, and it was awesome. The facilitator said, as we go around the room and introduce ourselves so Scott can better get to know us, would you mind sharing if you've had any experience with somebody who had an opioid issue, a substance abuse issue, or an addiction issue? Every single one of them had a story. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But I changed my whole presentation because I knew I had a group of people in the room who already get it. And there was a small group, but 4 of them have already called me for follow-up opportunities. So public speaking is something I do a lot, and I get out in front of people whenever possible. And, here in San Diego, we have a group called SOAP, S-O-A-P. Another group we'll talk about one day. It's sdsoap.org. We're a nonprofit networking group that invites all professionals who work in this field, whether you transport clients from treatment to meetings at night, or you're a clinician or an MD or a medical director or a clinical director or a psychologist or, CCAPper, or you're in business development, or you're a consultant, or you do anything ancillary services from, Qigong to yoga to mindfulness. We want everyone in the room. And people go, why would you have all these? Because we can cross-refer.
Right.
Because everything everyone does, most of us need at some point in our life. To your earlier point about working with people who have been in long-term recovery, you're absolutely right. When I left my nonprofit that I founded at Borge for 18 years, one of the leaders of the board said to me, boy, if we'd gotten a coach a long time ago, this might have been a different circumstance for you. So no, I think it was time to move on. But I didn't have someone to talk to, and then when your mom and dad are no longer on the planet, which are generally your confidants, if you still have an intact family, you can go to your significant other, but even your significant other is going to probably tell you what they think you want to hear. So having a coach today, in my opinion, even if it's a 30-minute trial check-in, why would you not take advantage of that? Especially if it's someone you've heard about that you feel you can trust, and then you decide for yourself whether that person's good for you or not.
Right. And that doesn't have any emotion attached. That's one of the big things.
Right.
Because a lot of times with the spouse or the parent or even the, sibling, my siblings, they're like sound walls. Like, they're like, okay, we heard what you had to say. Would you pass the butter? But with a coach, like I have a business coach, I have a podcast coach, I have a digital marketing coach, and all of this, I talk with these guys. Digital marketer coach I talk to twice a month, and then my business coach I talk to once a week. And my podcast, and then I got another coach too, but that's more of like a video thing. But I'm big into that, and because they don't have the emotion attached to what's happening in my life and my business. And if I fail at business, they're like, okay, we gave you some suggestions, we showed you the outline, and the reason I'm still here is because I take their actions, and I'm just growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I have got egg on my face. I have gone out there and done things that they suggest, and it came back a wounded puppy. And I was like, I kind of got mad at them for suggesting some things, but we have to just face life like that. And especially in recovery, there's some scary things in early recovery. I remember the first time I went on a date with this girl. She told me all these great things about herself, and she goes, so what did you do in high school? And I just looked at her like, oh my God, you don't even want to know what I did. And I didn't know how to answer it. And then I went to my best friend, and he's like, Sean, you surfed, you played piano, you were in a band, you played hacky sack, you hung out at the beach, you were a great skateboarder. And like, he came up with all these positive things for me, So that, like, coaching goes above and beyond, it's really kind of like the lighthouse, they know the light, and you kind of got to seek that. So I don't know a good analogy for it, but I'm all about coaching. So how are some of the ways that people can find you right now so that we can get them on board?
Well, the easiest is just Google me, Scott H. Silverman, Silverman spelled like the metal, Silverman. You can call me directly at 619-993-2738. That's 619-993-2738. And if you want, text me or email me, at scott@yourcrisiscoach.com. It's just easier. Google my name, and you'll find a variety of different, I only have one phone. I have a couple phone numbers. Actually, I'm one of those people who still has a landline, but nobody calls me on that anymore. So if you can email me, you can text me, you can poke me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Let's get connected, and we'll start the conversation.
So now, are you saying... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one more time with the phone number. It's 619-993-2738. And again, that's my personal cell. I say that because I really challenge people. I dare you, call me. And if you don't hear from me in 24 hours, you can call the host back and complain.
There you go.
Or you can go on Yelp, or you can call my wife and go, "What's wrong with your husband?" Or call one of my kids if you know him. But I want people to call, because if more people reached out, Sean, and actually asked for help, we would see more people getting it. And right now, I'm going to too many funerals. And I'm older now than I used to be. And I'm not going to my contemporaries' funerals. I'm going to 27-year-olds, 31-year-olds, 36-year-olds, 19-year-olds. And with fentanyl and this opioid crisis, and then now with carfentanil bubbling up all over the country, this is a real issue. And, it's interesting. This month, April, is Alcohol Awareness Month. Think about it. Why did alcohol awareness require a month? It took a long, because it started with a day, and then it built up to it.
Right.
We have International, Drug Overdose Day. Soon it's going to be a week, and then a month. And then soon we're going to have, 12 months of insanity we have to deal with. I mean, and you and I haven't even talked about the dually diagnosed, the behavioral health issues, the level of accelerated suicides in our country, and with young people. Right here in San Diego, about 5 months ago, we had, I think it was an 8-year-old. How does an 8-year-old take their own life?
Wow.
How does that happen in our society today? And that was not an isolated incident. There's more of it going on in our country now. We see it on the news. People are just flipping out. They cannot manage their feelings. They don't have any coping skills. No one intervened quick enough. No one saw the problem coming, or they had an issue with substance abuse, and they basically, ran out of money and things to steal and spun out and acted out. It just scares me when I think about the path that we're currently on. And I try to stay positive, but it can get very depressing at times. And that's where, I reach out to my sponsor, and I do service work, because if I don't get out of myself, I'm in trouble. I just know that. And I learned that in recovery. I didn't get that. The real world was go see a clinician and, maybe they'll write you a script. Well, that's kind of the old way of doing things, how we became, not how we became, but they were the generators of the medication. And we're certainly pill-oriented society, no doubt about that. So I just tell people, call me. And I suggest they call me. I don't like to tell them. I make the suggestion.
And the phone is going to be the main way. So now,
it is. So,
what's your middle name?
Oh, Harris. Harris.
Okay, so you're saying Scott. He's saying Scott H, like Harris Silverman, because I didn't want the listeners to think you're saying the letter A. So it's Scott H Silverman, and great. So then, what we definitely need to do. So there's such a wealth of information here. There's so much more to talk about. But right now we're talking about yourcrisiscoach.com, and this is with Scott H. Silverman. Go ahead and Google Scott. Again, it's H as in Harris, Scott H. Silverman, or you call him at area code 619-993-2738. Grab your pen and pencil right now and write this number down. It's area code 619-993-2738. And hook up with Scott. And whether you are early in sobriety, you have long-term sobriety, but especially if there's someone, a loved one, that is struggling right now and having a challenge, Scott can definitely help you get to the right person. If he can't help you, which I'm sure he can, we'll get you the help that you need so you can be with the people you love, sleep at night, and have peace of mind. Now, we're at the top of the hour, Scott, so I want to thank you for being on Sobriety Society. And we'll be talking with you shortly.
Pleasure. It was awesome.
Okay, man.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I'll let you know who calls. Take care, buddy.
Okay, man. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.